Welcome to Mental Fitness Stories. Back at it with a awesome interview. A great friend of mine, Jamal Jones, licensed marriage and family therapist, and also brings a background of playing football in college. We got a chance to talk about how mental fitness can help turn fear into opportunity. Can't wait for you to hear this episode. So take a moment, listen to it, watch it, and hope you find it as awesome as I did.
Well, hi, and welcome to Mental Fitness Stories with John Steele. I'm your host, John Steele, licensed marriage and family therapist. And today, man, super excited to talk about mental fitness and go over things like overwhelming anxiety, being able to reduce that. I got my good friend Jamal Jones with me here. Man, Jamal, how we doing?
I'm doing great, John. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Man, I'm so excited. I'm pumped.
Me too. In this conversation about mental fitness, I appreciate you getting the word out to the masses, especially amongst athletes, high achieving people. There's so much research that's been done about mindset and mental fitness. There's so much more awareness around mental health.
Yeah.
So I'm excited to see where this conversation goes.
Man, we're just going to roll with it. I love it. I love it. Well, let me do this. I mean, we'll get into as well kind of how we met, but let me let the people know where you're coming from and where you're at. So, Jamal, you are CEO and founder of Purpose Driven Therapist, LLC and Central Valley Christian Council. You are a former pastor, nonprofit leader, mental health practitioner, entrepreneur, man, who has learned a ton, right, from burnout experiences and have really led a transformative journey. In 2019, that was a time of struggle, but really being able to move through that to get to a place of creating a practice and a six-figure practice, within 2 years. And so, man, and as well being a growth coach for private practice therapists. And I want to make sure, Jamal, did I say that right? Your coaching practice, right? The name of that is?
The Purpose Driven Therapist, LLC.
Okay. I wanted to make sure, right? Purpose Driven Therapist, LLC, rocking it, man. And then as well, private practice too.
My private practice is Central Valley Christian Council.
Okay.
As you know, I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist based out of Fresno, California. And so all my therapy clients and marriage counseling clients go through Central Valley Christian Council.
Yep, definitely. So I knew you in college, right? Back in the day.
Yeah.
Back in the day. So we did a little FCA, Fellowship of Christian Athletes, back then. And so, man, that's where we got connected. Took a little hiatus. Our journeys went differently, right? They moved. And then, man, they just came back together.
Yeah.
So, and we've been able to talk about life, being a therapist, all kinds of other things. But then also landing on this topic, man, of mental fitness, and get a chance to go through that. So one of the things that I've appreciated, it's been fun to kind of do in these conversations is kind of get a chance to define mental fitness and kind of what that means. And jump in on the conversation and what that means for you and where you're at with kind of mental fitness.
Yeah, when I think about mental fitness, I can't help but think about all the time, the energy, the blood, the sweat, the tears that we put into our physical fitness as athletes. I mean, when I was at Skyline High School in Oakland, California, working to hopefully receive a scholarship to go to Division I college.
Yep.
Man, our head coach put us through some grueling off-season workouts, running 300s, doing power lifts, competing on the practice field. As an athlete, we care so much about our diet and nutrition. And there's so much that goes into being physically prepared for the season. What about our mindset? What about our mental fitness? How often do we hear about high achieving, performing athletes and entertainers who they have the talent, they have the skill, they're the best at their position, but their head is not in the game. They can't focus. They can't concentrate. The other night, Stephen Curry and LeBron James went head to head in San Francisco in two overtimes. And Stephen Curry scored 46 points. LeBron James scored 36 points. At the very end of the game, Lakers are down by 2. And LeBron James had to have the clarity of thought, the focus, the discipline in front of thousands of people in person and on national television to hit 2 free throws. And he did it under pressure.
Man, that's mental, right? As you're talking about the difference there, physical fitness being such a thing as an athlete, like you have to, right? You have to be, your body is like the instrument in so many ways in what you're doing. But part of the thing was that mental side of it, and coaches coming in and maybe being able to explain more about the interaction and how important that mindset is. But man, you can see it in the elite of the elite. They have to.
I remember when I met Pat Hill, my college football coach at Fresno State, going into the program. This is when this idea of mindset really became a really huge part of my life. Like prior to going to college, I knew about learning and education and, faith and spirituality and, thinking a certain way and trying to have positive thoughts and have less negative thoughts, kind of at a general level. But when I went to Fresno State, what I find fascinating about the way Coach Hill built his football program, we actually had a bulldog personality. Anybody who played under Pat Hill had to be tough, hard-nosed, aggressive, play with fanatical effort for as long as it takes to win and leave no doubt. And Coach Hill was all about being mentally tough. And if you're going to be a bulldog, you're going to be tough. Every Monday, so we have our games on Saturdays usually, sometimes Thursdays, but usually college football is on Saturdays. The one thing that Coach Hill did every Monday at the beginning of the week to prepare for the opponent, he would always give us a talk about the mindset of our opponent. Are they on a winning streak? Did they just lose a game? Are they a proud team? Are they a struggling team? And so Coach Hill in my life is one central figure when it comes to like, man, why is this head coach like placing such an emphasis on mindset and being tough, hard-nosed, aggressive, playing fundamental football for as long as it takes to win and leave no doubt.
Man. Yeah, that mindset, that emphasis, you got to put in the work when it comes to the physical side of it. But when you start entering into that mindset, it's how that extends, not only on the field, but it extends to life and what that means. And I know as an athlete, you're there to perform the best that you can in the moments that you get. You're there to be present. And I think what I've realized is within mental fitness, that is something that extends as well to all those other areas of life. How you want to be present, relationships that you have, right? That you are engaged in and within, maybe it's, other aspects of life. And so, man, I would love to as well hear what that means and how that was mental fitness and being kind of mentally tough.
One thing that comes up is I remember being at Fresno State, and I was fortunate to be on a full athletic scholarship. And this is the first time in my life where I began to experience appointment and what I would now call perceived failures. Because as a competitor, someone who had a dream of receiving a scholarship, that dream came to reality. In high school, I was the most valuable player, most inspirational player. I received a scholarship to Fresno State. That sense of having goals and focusing on those goals and moving toward those goals, it was all manifested. And so I went into Fresno State experiencing what I would consider a high level of success. Then I got to Fresno State and I was competing at a higher level now. And I was putting in more time, more energy, more effort. And one goal that I fell short of at Fresno State was I never became a full-time starter.
Mm.
And when you're an athlete, everybody wants playing time.
Yep.
Everybody wants more game reps,
Mm-hmm.
real life game reps.
Mm-hmm.
I had to learn how to deal with the reality that I was getting some practice reps,
Mm.
but when game time came, I had to learn to cheer for my
Mm.
teammates and still be prepared to go into the game if an injury
Man.
happened or something happened. But that feeling of disappointment,
Mm.
that feeling of not being able to be a full-time starter,
Mm.
but still being as committed as everybody else on the team,
Yep.
um, particularly as a man, dealing with disappointment, perceived failures can be really hard.
Big time. I mean, you know, that the failure piece, that intersection of resilience, there's some devastation to disappointment, right? When you are coming from high school, you know, kind of high school star, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then having to really go through some resilience, build that.
My senior year, this is an excellent example of mental fitness as well. So my
Mm.
senior year, it's that sense of this is my last year at Fresno State. I want to finish well. I want to go out strong.
Yep.
I still have opportunity to get more playing time to become a starter, and so I was even more vested in the off season. Every year, I was committed to the team.
Mm.
I would put in the work with the workouts,
Mm.
the practices, all that stuff. But it's just really competitive.
Big time.
In my senior year, one humbling thing I experienced was as a senior, I was placed on the scout team. Now, the scout team is usually for incoming freshmen, guys on the team who are not getting as many game reps. They might not be on a travel squad. And so that was very humbling my senior year.
Mm.
We had a good season. I went to a bowl game. I would be I will receive an award, the humanitarian award for my involvement off the field.
Mm.
Um, I was also voted the team's most inspirational player that year.
Mm.
And I always think of my senior year at Fresno State as like a reminder that you never know who's watching.
Mm.
Mentally, even though you might be frustrated or struggling to get through a hard time, you got teammates watching you, you got coaches
Mm.
watching you. And I was humbled and amazed that, wow, like in terms of being on the field and making plays in the game that
Mm.
impact the outcome of the game, I didn't get as many of those reps as I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
Yet and still, my teammates voted me most inspirational player,
Man.
which says that my mindset at that time was I was an optimist,
Mm.
an enthusiast.
Mm.
I instilled hope in my teammates.
Yep.
Maybe they saw how I was dealing with adversity in my own life, and they were like, "Man, Jamal's dealing with that. If Jamal can show up for practice, dealing with what he's dealing with, well, I can show up too.
Mm.
If if Jamal can be positive and encouraging, well, I can be positive." And it speaks to the like, what kind of culture do you want? Because mental fitness also impacts the culture that we're
Mm-hmm.
in the
Yes,
work
it
environment
does.
and athletic
Mm-hmm.
environment.
Yes, it
And to really
does.
have a championship team
Mm.
or to have a championship staff in the corporate setting or
Yep.
to build a private practice like you and I are doing,
Mm.
you want to have some healthy values and you want to have a healthy culture. And you're not going to have that if you don't have good mental fitness.
Yep. Big time. Because, you know, at that time, those are huge moments, right? The most inspirational, you know, that kind of transformation that happened for you, and recognizing that importance in mindset, you know, and what that does. And then talking about how that impacts the whole culture, right? You don't know necessarily who might be impacted, what kind of maybe is named as a failure, but kind of creating opportunity in it. Is that kind of what you see as kind of part of this mental fitness
Yeah.
definition?
One of the things I've noticed over my life journey and in my practice is that at a human level, we all have some fear of being rejected.
Mm.
We all have some fear of not being fully accepted. Um, there's some fear of some cases of being abandoned.
Mm,
So oftentimes at a human level, we're operating from a place of fear,
mm,
fear of being criticized. Um, well, I've discovered that we want to lean into those fears.
mm,
Um, whether you're a sales professional who has to make some phone calls and meet with some prospects to sell a product, whether you're somebody who's single, this is
mm.
a big part of the story as well.
Yeah.
I was single in college. I was
Mm,
single as a young professional. I got married in my early 30s. So the whole romance and dating, like the
mm.
sense of putting yourself out there to pursue someone, to
Man.
ask them for a first date, or
Mm-hmm.
even as a husband, initiating intimacy with your spouse,
Mm,
as a parent, um, initiating conversations with your children where it's going to
mm-hmm.
cause them to throw a tantrum. So at a human level, we can draw examples from every part of our life,
Yep.
and see that fear.
Mm,
And what I propose to our audience today is to, instead of avoiding those conversations,
mm,
avoiding those circumstances, being afraid of the worst possible outcome, to
mm,
actually, I like to say, be encouraged.
mm.
Be encouraged and courageously lean into those opportunities for growth.
Man, big time. Part of what we're going through today and talking about is sometimes that paralyzing anxiety, right? When you get hit with that fear. Then I love how you name as well, at a human, right? At a human level, like we want connection, and because of that connection, we're also opening ourselves up to rejection, and you're naming what that means, and then being able to, instead of in so many ways going away from that, being able to lean into it. Are there some things that come to mind on maybe how you might move from that fear and then move towards, okay, I'm gonna encourage this, I'm gonna take this step? It's been one of those things for me to even like do something like this, do a podcast, right? And get out there and be like, "Ooh, there's a lot of fear. There's a lot of fear right now,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
But just that like intersection, is there a way or two that you kind of move from that spot of fear and leaning into it?
Yeah, there's several things that can be done. For one, I am a man of faith.
Mm,
Um, it's amazing working in the mental health space. Um, I provide faith-based mental health services,
mm,
and just by nature of me like being a part of the life of the church and being in faith-based recovery settings, even though we profess to have faith,
mm,
many of us are paralyzed by fear.
mm,
So we need to name that and just acknowledge that
mhm,
just because we might say that we like believe in God or we have faith,
mm.
I mean that fear is still present.
Yep.
And so one simple thing is to make a decision to choose faith over fear.
Mm,
So okay, what do you mean by that, Jamal? How do you choose faith over fear?
mm,
Where a definition of faith is the substance of things hoped for.
mm,
You are hoping to start a podcast. You are hoping to
mm,
start your own private practice. You are hoping to
mhm.
get married. You are hoping to start your family. We are hoping for so many things to happen in our futures. So faith is the substance of things hoped for, the evidence of things not seen, right? Which means it
Mm,
hasn't been materialized yet.
mm,
And so we can adopt the mindset, a mentality of literally walking by faith,
mm,
even though we can't see the outcome,
mhm,
which also speaks to belief,
mm,
right? Sometimes, like you didn't have this podcast yet, but you had a belief about it. You had a conviction
mhm,
about it. And that
mhm,
belief and that conviction, the vision is also
mm,
important,
mhm.
right? The more vision you have, the more clarity you have. And the more
Yep.
clarity you have, the easier it is to know the next step.
Mhm, mhm,
Visualization, like in athletics, Stephen Curry, LeBron James, Patrick Mahomes, all these athletes, they visualized making these plays before the plays even happen.
Mm-hmm.
So there's so many different ways. Another thing I'll add is I've really become a fan of the growth mindset.
Okay, tell me more about that.
We're winning and learning all day, every day, baby. Winning and learning. With this growth mindset, there is no such thing as failure.
Okay.
You're either winning, making progress, and the perceived failures are learning experiences.
Yep.
They're building blocks.
Yep.
When you lose, don't lose the lessons. If you miss the lesson, if you don't get the lesson from the experience, well, you've missed the mark. But the only way to really get that feedback and to improve and to grow is to look at where you made a mistake, where things didn't go the way you wanted, and to evaluate it. Watch the film, in essence. As athletes, we watch the film. We go back and we watch the film to look for the lessons on how to adjust, how to get better. So that was a lot. Man, I'll turn it back over to you, John.
You threw it down right there. There's no question.
Well, man, I hope you enjoyed that as much as I did in this part 1, this interview with Jamal Jones, turning fear into opportunity as he dropped things like growth mindset. And that's going to be coming up next week in part 2. So stay tuned. And as you're listening or watching, remember to comment as well. I would love to hear your feedback, thoughts that you might have as we build this mental fitness community. And you can also reach out on my website at johnsteeltherapy.com. I look forward to part 2 coming next week. And remember to be curious, stay curious without judgment. Until next time. Thank you for joining us on this transformative journey through mental fitness stories with John Steele. If you resonated with today's episode, don't forget to hit subscribe and leave a review on your podcast platform of your choice. Remember, your story is important, and so is your mental well-being. If you have a personal mental fitness journey you'd like to share or topics you'd like us to explore in future episodes, reach out to us on social media or through our website. Stay tuned for more inspiring conversations, expert insights, and practical tips to help you cultivate a resilient mind. Until next time, take care of your mind, nurture your inner dialogue, and prioritize your self-care. Remember, you are not alone, and your mental fitness and well-being is worth the investment. Thanks for being a part of the Mental Fitness Stories community.